I want to start off sharing my story. There's something that in youth that I really don't hold back when it comes to youth. I tell them my journey. I tell them what I'm feeling. Even last Wednesday, we had family time, and I had to tell, the youth that something's different this year. I talk with the leaders, like worship, like we're not even worshiping the way we used to worship. What happened? Where did the turn take? And I want to share my personal story, even when I started here and even my childhood. And I'm also going to be talking about David and Goliath, because I see a lot of us, you can relate to my story, I believe, better than you can relate to a man that, I don't even know what David looks like, to be honest with you. I know he's handsome. So we have that in common. Amen? Amen? Okay. So, but with that said, just work with me here. I am very nervous. I say I'm cold, that's why I'm shaking, so hopefully I believe that. But I'm very nervous about it. I do want to, like I said, start off, I've been here about a year and a half. A little over a year and a half. And when I first started, I was excited. Flick welcomed me. Every single one of y'all welcomed me. Somebody did vote no. I haven't forgot. But it's just something that I've always felt welcome here. But then I want to say right about a month is when, I guess, reality started sitting in, where I started going to leadership meetings, and I would go to Flick's office, and I'll say, hey, Flick, this is what I want to preach about, and what do you think about this? He was like, well, in 1 John 26:13, it says this. I was like, how do you do that? Like, I don't have scriptures memorized, and I don't have that theology background like he does, and he loves sitting in the office and studying, and I'll be in the office 30 minutes, and I'll be like, and I just want to get out and go, do something, because that's the way I was raised. And then, we go to leadership meeting, then you had, like Tim Laws, he can work crazy things with numbers. He would send emails like at 3 in the morning to Marty because he's working on the budget or he's doing this and he has questions. And then, like even Sharon Hodges was there. We got Sharon. My wife always talked about her. Like I'm in the same room as her. And I was just kind of looking around, and I was just like, and all this was coming on me. I was like, what am I doing here? Everyone like business owners, and this was what was going through my heart. Just like, God, did we miss this one? Was someone else supposed to be here? And then am I sitting in my office, I'm just thinking, my background, who I was and where I came from. This is a picture of my family. It's an older one here. And this is you might have to turn off the lights. And you can turn off all the lights if you need to, because we're dark, but not that dark. But, of course, the handsome one to the left is me. That's my dad in the middle. The one on the bottom is Damien. The one on the right is Lucifer, and the red one is Satan. And those were my brothers and where we grew up, The second one, and this is a memory that I have, it's actually of a birthday party. And the second one here, like, I was so basic that I had to share my birthday with 3 other people because all of us ended up in August 16th, 18th, 22nd, and 26th. So the birthday cake's a happy birthday, Joe, Jacob, Marcus, and Matthew. And we got a basketball for, one basketball for all 4 of us. So, and it was just so basic. I didn't grow up great or anything of that nature. The third one is going to be of Easter. I never knew that you have to have grass to have an Easter egg hunt because we grew up on the farm. All that is dirt. This is just, basic. And the last one I want to show is like our house, where we lived on the farm. Our closest neighbor was about 3 miles away, but this was our house that we first bought, my parents first bought when I was a 10th grader. And that was we actually fixed it up. We actually painted it and stuff. But all of this was coming back to me when I was sitting in my office saying, God, why do you have me here? I don't feel like I need to be here. I'm just a basic person. And I'm just overwhelming in my own personal thoughts. What am I doing here? I don't belong. I don't have the education. I don't have the tools I need to lead this youth group. And through that, it took me a while, but there's a blessing in basic. There's a blessing in a basic life. And throughout my message, I don't want you to misinterpret it. Some of us have had a very blessed life. God can still use you, but this is my personal story that I want to share with you that I hope helps you, but also helps the church. There's a blessing of basic. And I want everybody to repeat this too. All you have is all that you need. All that you have is all that you need. And I want to just go through here and just preach this. And I'm going to be, like I said, talking about David and Goliath, but I'm also going to be talking about my personal life and how God has shown me and how God has prepared me from when I was a child to how God is using me today. Because I can stand here 100% and saying that God has me here for a purpose, has me here on purpose for a purpose. The first one I want to tell you is that God picks what others pass. Here in 1 Samuel 16:12, so he sent for him and he had him brought in, meaning David. Because when Samuel came to anoint the king, where was David at? In the fields. Didn't even consider him, period. Some of us here, like I said, have forgotten that we were created by a mighty, mighty God. We forgot. Number two is that we even forgot how powerful God is. None of us were here by accident. Even if your parents told you you're an accident, you're not an accident. Okay? God knew and created you for a purpose, on a purpose. Do you even realize the power of God? He knew where you would be sitting at right now. You have a divine appointment right now to hear from God, if you believe it. 1 Samuel 17, 32 to 33 says this too. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on the account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him, Saul replied. You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are not able to go and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. You ever been called to do something and you just constantly getting, no, you don't need to do that. No, you can't do that. Do you realize me and Teresa sat in a room with people that we admired, and we talked about becoming a youth leaders at Genesis for the very first time, and they advised against it. Imagine what would happen if we would have listened. And just a side note, she said she'll be leading the youth, and somehow she played some mind games, and I ended up leading the youth. But just imagine, you're going to have society that tells you you can't do something, you can't do something, you shouldn't do something. There are always more reasons why you shouldn't do something. You're always going to have more reasons why you shouldn't do something. I was sitting there in the office thinking, okay, I'm not qualified, I don't have an education. You know, I use double negatives, I guess is what Flick told me one time. You know, these words in the Bible, like I could pronounce Jesus and that's about it. I mean, I just felt like I wasn't there. And then I said, okay, let me try to think, turn my thinking. What do I have in common? And about after 10 minutes, I said, hey, I'm bald. Most of the church is bald. So that's the only thing that I could think of. Amen? There we go. Come on. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of what we had in common. I had every reason not to. Part of my story, too, is like when I went in to tell the boss that, hey, I'm going to ministry. First of all, he didn't even understand, like, why would you leave this for ministry? And then the second thing he told me that I didn't expect, he says, we are preparing you for management. That's why you've been doing all this ordering and, working with John and trying to do stuff. We have a position for you, and we're setting you up to take that spot. And then I took a pay cut. And all of this is coming, and I was like, God, can we go back maybe? And I started, of course, doubting myself and what was going on here. There's always more reasons why you shouldn't do something. Always more reasons why you shouldn't do something. When we evaluate what we have, we disqualify ourselves. When we evaluate and we sit down, God called me to do this, and we see, okay, I don't have this, then we disqualify ourselves. Our mind, our thoughts are our worst enemy. Do not disqualify yourself. The second thing I want to talk about is there are blessings that are revealed through basic tasks. There are blessings revealed through basic tasks. 1 Samuel 17:17. Please take for your brothers some food. A basic task that David had to do because God wanted him to be there. A lot of times we try to set ourselves up in position. You know, I've been through many companies, and you always have that one person that tries to set themselves up for success. If you have a divine appointment with God and a calling, it's going to happen. You have to get the correct timing. One, if you do it too soon, you're not going to be ready. Jesus was in the temple, correct? When he was young. And what did they say there? I'm not sure what chapter it's in, but he was there. Mary lost him for 3 days, called CPS. But then they lost him for 3 days, and then he was there and he was teaching others. He was teaching the leaders. And the Bible, I believe, says, you know, they were astonished just by the way this 12-year-old talked. He wasn't ready yet. He wasn't ready. He had a continued life. Then God was going to call him. Partly on my personal story, and like many of you don't know this, but Pastor Kyle called me right before Kayla. It wasn't time. I wasn't ready because God told me to stay where I was at. And I'm glad I did that because I was able to receive more. The church needed me at that time. Too soon, you're going to fail. When God calls you, rise. God will get you where you need to be if you continue to serve him. Don't position yourself. Next point is God gives you what you need. God has given you what you need to step up and do something. Samuel 17:40 says, then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with a sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. A lot of us want something from God and want God to push us, but yet we haven't finished the task that he has given us. What God has called you to do, you have to finish that task. God's not going to give you a new vision if you haven't fulfilled the old vision. Do you understand that? Some of us have given up on the vision that God has given you because we disqualify ourselves or what have you. We don't do certain things because of the society that tells us something. And we have just given up on it. He's not going to give you a new vision until you finish the one that he currently has given you. You know, in this also too, I don't have the verse up there, but they started putting all this armor on David because that's what you're supposed to do. Through the research also, the whole army was sitting there, and I didn't even realize this, but they didn't have any swords. The Philistines had all the armor. There was no blacksmith there to be able to do it. So what they did, they got their pitchforks and they got their shovels and they sharpened them. And that's what they were fighting with against the Philistine army that had all the armor. No wonder they were scared. David came back to his basic self, took everything off, and what God has been training him for when he's out there herding the sheep, saving the sheep, he returned back to what God was teaching him and training him. Returned back to basics, the blessing of basic. Returned back to who he was. There's things in our lives, and I honestly feel this, there's things in your life that God told you to start walking to and walking toward. And then because of fear, well, wait, I don't have the right thing, so we stop. We stop ourselves because God told us to do something, and then we just stop because when we evaluate it, I need this, I need that. The second thing is why we don't move forward is because God's not going to give you the entire picture. He's not going to give you all the puzzles. He's going to give you a puzzle piece. But we as humans want to sit here, okay, God, give me the rest of the puzzle, because before I go out there, I want to see how it's going to work out. If God gave you everything on how it's going to work out, you wouldn't have any faith. You wouldn't have any faith. This next point I think is a very big point. You have to move toward your vision. You have to move toward your vision. You have to move toward it. Samuel 17:46. This day the Lord will deliver you in my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. When you start moving toward your vision, what God created you for, there's a couple things I want you to take away from this one here, is that he acknowledges God. It is not him. It is God. God has been training him since he's been out there all by himself. God has been training him. The same way God has been preparing me since I've been on the farm. He has been training him. The Lord will deliver you into my hands. God is going to deliver him. You acknowledge who God is. And the question is, have we forgotten who God is? Have we forgotten the power that God has? The maker of the heavens and the earth. The second one thing is that he proclaims victory. He acknowledges God. Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down. How many of y'all seen Mortal Kombat? Or y'all played Mortal Kombat? Okay, a couple of you. Well, then 4 of y'all are going to get this. The rest of y'all just work with me. In Mortal Kombat, there's a part at the very end where your opponent gets dazed, and your opponent's like this. And then what happens? Finish him. You see, God gives you the victory, and God says, and God's going to deliver you. God's already won it, but he's not down yet. Our enemy, our insecurities, God has given us victory over it. And the Mortal Kombat there, we're just like this, and our enemy's like this. And God says, finish it. But some of us don't step out for whatever reason, insecurity, but what society has told us, or the way we're going to look, or we don't feel qualified enough. The victory is there. It's for us to go and get it. It's for us to claim it. We proclaim it. He proclaimed, I'll strike you down. He proclaimed it. And then, after it's all done, he gave glory to God. The whole world would know that there's a God in Israel. God gives you the victory. God's going to, and this is something that I want you to put, most important point here, you have to move toward it. Because there's a lot of us that just sit down and we just want everything to fall in our lap. God, I want financial freedom. Hurry up. God, I want this freedom from this addiction. Hurry up. God, I want a better marriage. And we don't want to move toward it. God has given you that victory. You have to do something. This is why I feel like the altar is so important. Because whenever we're ready to surrender, you have to do something. Peter had to step out of the boat. Jesus didn't just pick him up and just lay him there and say, okay, walk. He had to step out. You have to do something. You have to move. Move toward it. God will put things within your reach. He's going to put it here. It's up to us to go and get it. To claim the victory that God has already given us. And this next point too is 1 Samuel 17:48. When you have to move toward it, this is what the Bible says in verse 48. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly. What kind of confidence does David have to run quickly against the giant? He ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. David knew who God was. He acknowledged who God was. And in the name of Yahweh, he defeated him. Next point is going to be take your shot. Take your shot. You know, if you've seen Caleb play basketball, he's an excellent shooter. He was just really noticed last year when he went, 4 for 5, 5 for 5 on three-pointers. Of course, he's my son, and I watch every single game that he's played. Even since 8th grade, he would be 3 for 3 in the first half. And I would say, Caleb, you're 3 for 3. He'll be coming out. You know how you give your kids saying language and tell them what to do and what not to do? I was like, you're 3 for 3. Shoot the ball. Take your shot. You know what will happen in the second half? He'll go 0 for 0 because he wouldn't shoot. I was like, Caleb, you're 100%, and I used to always tell him, you're 100% on your threes. You shoot, you make it. You shoot, you make it. You shoot, you make it. Even if you shot 3 more times, that's 50%. That's still more than the average. Take your shot, but he wouldn't take the shot. 1 Samuel 17:49 says this, reach into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. We have our giants dazed and confused, and God's already given us the victory, but a lot of us don't even take our shot because of fear. We have to start taking our shots. This is always questioned me. I've always had a question, and I'll probably never know. But why did David choose 5 stones? There's a lot of reasons why people think, it's Jesus or what, spells Jesus for every stone, whatever have you. My philosophy, it's not even philosophy, what I want to believe, is that David chose 5 stones because maybe he thought he was going to miss. Maybe he thought he was going to miss. That's why he chose 5. Maybe it had nothing to do with that. That makes me feel better. I'm going to edit that out because Flick won't agree with it. But it just makes me feel because, what if he chose 5 because he was going to miss it? What if he thought maybe there's a chance I may miss and I'll have another stone? Some of us miss our target and then we stop. It's time to strike and keep striking if you know it's from God. It's time to strike and keep striking from God. I want to go to 2 Kings 13. And I'm not going to read it all, but this is going to say, Elisha told him, strike the ground. He struck it 3 times and stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. And because of that, he's only going to have 3 victories because he struck the ground only 3 times. When I started coming to youth, there's one thing that God really opened my heart on, and it was the worship. These kids had the heart. But man, they fought like 10-year-olds. And I was like, God, there's something special here. And after, we even went to the Sweet 16. And I was trying, and I went to these seminars, and I did some research, and then Faith tried to turn it to the Sweet 23. And I was like, no, it's the Sweet 16. And, song choice and that, and we just had to keep going, and keep going. And now I'm so blessed by the youth when they just sing because you can feel their heart. Keep striking. And this message is for somebody, and I can feel it. Some of you have given up on some of your dreams because of what other people thought. Some people have it may be a job, it may be a business, whatever it may be, do not give up because you struck out a couple times. Especially don't give up on God because he felt like he's let you down. And of course, my wife, she did a message several weeks ago. And time after time and after time, it's not easy. But keep striking, keep going. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. Inherit new instruments. Today's war will probably provide new weapons for tomorrow. Today's war that you're going through, today's trials that you're going through is going to provide the weapons that you need for tomorrow. And what I mean by that is living on a farm is lonely. But what I've done in my past, and I was a farmer, I was on the tractor, get home from school, get on the tractor, and especially harvest. I never got to go to football games because harvest falls right in football season. And we got to listen to it on the radio. Yay. But, that was the childhood that we had. In the summer, we really couldn't do AAU or anything nature because we had to plow the fields. The only time we got off is when it rained. What I was taught as a child, I was able to use at this church. And I know, of course, most of you don't know this. We have 9 rooms over there. When I first started here at First Baptist, our sound person had their laptop on a chair like this. We had thick cords running down the middle of the aisle. And then when the poor band got up there, they were shoulder to shoulder. Y'all remember this, right? Y'all were shoulder to shoulder, and I was like, praise God. Oh, sorry. I mean, it was just so small. And do you realize that and I think Nelson was in there too, but we cleaned out every single room in there. We had a small group since the kids were sitting on tube TVs. There was like 4 tube TVs in one room, and they're sitting on them, and pianos everywhere. But that's something that I was able to bring to this church, and where I realized God has prepared me for something. I was able to expand the stage. I was able to get all the junk out of the rooms and put some pride in the rooms. With my hands, we're able to create a sound booth. That's what I was able to use and go back to basics, and what my dad taught me, I was able to use and bless others with it. Returning to basics. That's what God needed me here at this time to do. 1 Samuel 17:50-51. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. And then if you go back a little bit, remember what David said. I will strike you down and cut off your head. Now, how is David going to cut off his head with stones and a sling? You ever think about that? And then again in here, it says here in 50:51, and without a sword in his hand. Without a sword, and this is what I'm talking about, the puzzle pieces. We want the whole picture. Okay, God, I'm declaring I'm going to cut off his head, but guess what? I don't even got a sword. How are you going to do this? And then we start walking in doubt and trying to put the puzzle together instead of doing what God told us to do. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran, stood over him. He took the hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from his slath. Hey, I'm basic. After he killed him, he cut off his head with a sword. Do you understand that when it's time to do something and you step out in faith, God's going to give you everything that you need when it's time? But yet somehow we forgot that. Somehow we forget it. There's going to be times that the pain that you're going through right now, he's going to take, and you're going to be able to use it to glorify him one day. You know, me and my wife have been through a lot. We've moved. We lived in Colorado, Midland, Amarillo, Midland, Pflugerville, and Hereford, of all places. And we have been through a lot. And now it's kind of crazy how some couples call us and say, hey, we need to talk to you. And it's about marriage. And me and her look at each other like, us? But we have been through it. And I believe that we're able to bless others through that. What caused us pain back then when we're on the edge of divorce back then, now we're able to use that and tell these kids something. Share our experiences. My last point. One person can start a movement. One person can start a movement. 1 Samuel 17:52 says this. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines. And this is where I want to get a little real and honest with us, each other. The Bible also says that the army just sat there. And the Philistine, Goliath, came, and how many times a day did he call them out? Twice a day. It says in the morning and in the evening, Goliath came out, defiled God, talked bad about God, and called him out. For 40 days, that's 80 times that this giant has came out and challenged him. And nobody did anything. They just sat there. And then and fill my heart here, and this is coming from a great place, but the same thing I told the youth, what have we accepted today? That we just sit there. Number one, I'm going to talk about the schools. The schools are not a very good place if you don't know that. Talk to any one of these kids. Pastor Daniel at Genesis, when he moved down here, his son, I forgot his name. Don't tell him. I forgot his name, but he came down here and he was a freshman. The very first day that he was here in his new school, he was offered drugs. These kids can get drugs like that if they wanted it. True? They can't see your heads. If you wanted drugs, could you get them? Those are our kids. What role do we have as a generation? Do we believe that one person can make a difference? But it only takes one person to stand up and rise and say, this is not okay. Because as soon as David got up and went out there by himself and struck down the giant, guess what the army did? They rose. They stood up and joined the fight. Can that be you? Is that you? It's not okay to get threats every single week for the school. The last one I know of is right before homecoming. Someone wrote something on the bathroom wall about they're going to shoot up the school. And it's just common, and we hear these things, and we're just like, okay. Why don't we do anything? Is it even up to us? Our church. Every church in town that I talk to, all the churches are declining. All the churches are declining. Do we believe in the power of God? Do we? Can we proclaim in His name that God has already given us a victory over the schools? Do you realize that? We have victory over the schools. All we have to do is take our shot and claim it. Because just us sitting here, nothing's going to happen. Our church, Wednesday nights are crazy. We draw every different type of religion that's out there, every type of background we have on a Wednesday night here. Is that something you get plugged into? Is that your calling? And it may not be your calling. Even with our church, I know the Herrings are, they do a wonderful job on the funeral. But I know even sometimes it's getting harder and harder to get food. Maybe just cooking a meal or getting on the list saying, hey, this funeral's coming up. Can you bring a pot of something? Because it's getting harder and harder. I know that. Maybe that's your calling. Do not disqualify yourself from doing something. There's many things that we can do. Many things. We have to declare victory. We have to run toward it, take your shot, and then we have to finish it. And as the kids come up here, this is something that, like I said, I want you to, we're going to play 2 songs, and we're going to do it differently. This next song that we're going to play, I want you to understand something here. Judas had the best pastor. Judas had the best leader. He had the best mentor. He had the best advisor. He had the best counselor. But yet Judas failed. Why? Because of his heart. I don't know what God's telling you right now. I don't know what God's trying to tell you to do. I understand not everybody's called to the children's ministry or even a ministry. Some people want to be in the background serving. That's great. But church, we have to do something. I don't feel comfortable just sitting back and just saying, oh, another threat. Hey, every church is declining. It's okay. Can you be the person? I'm not expecting every single one of you to run up here and say, God, use me. But guess what? If we get one person that will take a stand and say, my God is greater. In the name of Yahweh, I'm declaring victory. Our school's going to change. I may not have all the pieces to it, but guess what? I don't need the pieces, because when I get there, the pieces are going to be there waiting for me. Do you believe that? Can you be that person that sparks something that turns into a fire? Can you be that person that takes a stand? It just takes one to get the army going. Sometimes we have to surrender what we have in our hearts and replace it with Christ. Maybe that's what we need to do. I have no clue what you need to do, but I do know doing nothing is not the answer. Believe in Yahweh, the God that gives you everything you need. Basic person of myself had been so blessed to be at this church. And one reason why I bring this message to you is because I believe in you. I see it. I see it in every single one of your hearts. And just imagine if we came together. But that's your decision. Let's stand and sing. What you understand also too is that Jesus, a basic boy, born of a basic woman, born in a basic place, carried a basic cross and changed the world. There is power in being basic. God had you rise in your childhood, and what you went through is there for a reason. There is power in being basic. Every single one of us has that power. God has a destiny over you, a divine appointment over you. Acknowledge who He is. Face your fears, face your giant, take the shot, and then claim victory over it.